We're going to go old school here. We'll go live. It is a few minutes before 1 o'clock Eastern time. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. I don't know what the technical issue is with YouTube, but lately when I go to launch a live stream, it asks me, when do you want to start? And I say 1 o'clock, and it goes, sorry, could not save that. What time do you want to start? And I go 1 o'clock, and they go, sorry, could not save that. And so if I try another room, then of course it leaves the old one up. So I didn't want to go through that on Friday. I had a bunch of phantom rooms. So today I just said, you know something? Skip it. I'm going to put it up, and the title is 1 o'clock. So that's the whole point. Happy Sunday, Sarah Callahan, Mindbend, Retired Butcher Boy, Dave Beddoes, JP, Dixie Champagne, David C. Allen, Moose, Bullwinkle, Science Girl are all in the room along with a few others, Paul D'Amelio and Ilya. I said hey to him. The Finns say hey to each other, but it's H-E-I, H-E-I. You can, of course, read that when we say it, but in your mind, you need to say, oh, it's H-E-I, not H-E-Y. So, hey, and it's actually an appropriate address. In America, if you walk up to someone and say hey to them, it's not considered as formal as hi or hello, but it works. So, Jeremy Garris, hello from South Windsor, Connecticut. Thank you for checking in. Sarah Callahan, hope for the Lions. Well, they got more time to work out, right? But they just yesterday fired the manager and the GM. The coach, the head coach, and the GM both got canned. And there's a lot of talk that Harbaugh might be on the way out for the University of Michigan after losing to Penn State. And right there, that's Penn State's first win of the year. No one wanted to be that team. So Gary Belcher, hey, for North Carolina. Robert Penzick, good nearly late morning. Depends on where you are, I suppose. Paul Lemke's in Mayville, Wisconsin, watching with his wife. And this is, of course, a family-friendly program. Matthew Shostrom, another week has passed already. Well, it depends. Were you here on Friday? Because if so, no. If not, yes. But, by the way, it's a beautiful day here in Michigan. It's gorgeous out there. Right now, it's 48 degrees and sunny. It's supposed to hit a high of 51. And with sunshine and no wind, I'll go for a bike ride as soon as they wrap this up. So this might be my last day for a nice just outdoor bike ride. I've got a little 6-mile loop I do. I'll go out and do that and probably put the bike away for the winter, which is sad. But I did get the Viper out yesterday. It wasn't as sunny and nice as it is today, but it was dry. It was warm enough. I thought, you know something? It's been parked for almost 2 weeks. I could take it out right now and just, limber things up a little bit and then put it away. And we'll save some time. So Robert Penzick, will Michigan catch COVID to stop Ohio from going to the playoffs? This whole season has got so much oddity, so many odd things to it that, who knows what could happen. So, Eric Norman points out it is, in fact, 12:47. I think it was when he said that. I show 12:56 on one clock, 12:53 on another. I've got one over here that's an analog clock. Appears to say about 12:55, but, I don't know why these things aren't all synchronized, but they ought to be. Hello from Detroit, Michigan, Pretty Butterfly. Well, thank you for checking in, my friend. Detroit, of course, is the biggest city near me. So if I meet people from out of the state, I get interviewed and they'll say, where are you from? When I'm talking to somebody in Georgia, I don't say, oh, I'm from Southfield, Michigan. I go, I'm from Detroit. So that's one of those interesting things of what you relate to when you talk to people about where you're from. Johnny Knoxville, 62 and sunny in Raleigh, North Carolina. Biggest question, of course, is what's it like in Bad Axe? I haven't looked yet. Red or No 21 Turbo is in the house along with Bob Summers. It is noon in Norman, Oklahoma. Yeah. And that's the funny thing is, again, I've got people who watch the show from Australia and New Zealand, for instance, and they're, I think, tomorrow. I've got a very good friend in New Zealand that I'll occasionally correspond with. And I have to keep telling myself that we're a day apart, literally 1 day apart. Gabriel Williams from Cleveland checking in. Kenny Briggs checking back in, my good friend from Wisconsin, the Wisconsin lockman, who also is a dealer for metal detectors. And we talked about him at length last live stream, which I think was on Friday. And that's a sad part about being in the Midwest, if you're a metal detectorist, is that you get shut down this time of the year because the ground is frozen and you can't really detect when the ground is frozen. It's really, really tough to dig. And so you put the detector away until the spring, and even then you got to wait till all the snow is gone and the ground is soft enough to dig in. So it's a half a year kind of hobby. Johnny Knoxville's checking in, 47 and sunny in Bad Axe, Michigan. More at the 1:15 past the hour. I worked at a radio station that did the weather on the 8s, 08, 18, 28, 30. And there's other stations do it on the 7s and then on the 10s. And it's like, really, do we need the weather and traffic every 10 minutes? But it happens. Pretty Butterfly lives within the boundaries of Detroit proper. Within the boundaries. Very cool. Rock Sin, I caught you live. Nice. I'm glad you're here. Walter White. Hey, Mr. Lehto. Stephen with a PH here. There you go. The funny thing is that there's nothing wrong with the PH or the V. It's just a funny oddity of how our names are spelled. And the funny part is I've never used Stephen. I will admit to you that my birth name is Stephen, right? But I've never used Stephen. Only 2 or 3 people have ever called me that on a regular basis. And so when I'm in court, I will say, my name is Steve Lehto. Steve Lehto. And if they say, spell your name, I'll go Lehto. And I've had a court reporter say, how do you spell your first name? And I go, Steve can only be spelled with a V. And they go, but it's Stephen, isn't it? I said, no, I said Steve. And then we get this weird showdown because I can use Steve if I want to. And they can't force me to use Stephen. But if I don't tell them which it ought to be, if they lengthened it, then they have to go with Steve. So there you go. Dallas is on board. Dennis Berman. Matt checking in from Lincoln, Nebraska. I've driven by Lincoln, but never been to Lincoln. Lemzia, where's the hundo? Where's the hundo is there. I've had a couple videos recently that apparently caused some consternation, as we say, because one of them on a video that went up this morning, it's hidden in a place I've never used before, but the edges show. And then today, right now, it's tucked in someplace, and I think it depends on the lighting. You might not see it very well, but it's there. Someone will spot it. G-Voked, hello from your fan in Albuquerque. And I will get to your book, just not today. I do want to read it. I'm almost finished up with my last book. And again, Johnny points out you can call me Steve or Mr. Lehto or the Steve. Rich Law will have traffic on the 8s. Oh, yeah, Dixie Champagne or the Steve. There you go. Yeah, Stephen Shaw points out that pronounced Stephen is British, but if pronounced as Stefan, it's just a bad pronunciation. Yeah, and you'll see it spelled that way, Stefan, Stefan, or Stefan. Depends on, I suppose. So Donald Norby from Oxford, Alabama. Newtonian, what's the value of an MBA/JD joint degree? Do I know of any people with one? I think I know a couple, but I don't know how useful that would be. I really don't. The thinking is that if you had an undergraduate degree and you got an MBA and a JD, that theoretically you could speak to people in business using their own language. And I don't know how useful it is because I know a lot of attorneys at big firms that deal with big businesses without MBAs. And so I suspect it might just be more money than it's worth to get, but I could be wrong. I could be. I don't know. I've only known 1 or 2 people who had them, and I don't know that they made it, that made it any more worthwhile for them. Matthew Shostrom, if tomorrow the continental United States was changed to a single time zone, would you complain? Probably not. But the biggest problem you have there then is, noon on the East Coast. It would still seem like morning on the West Coast. And so you find that the biggest complaints people have about the time zones is the people who live near the edges. So like, for instance, many people don't realize that Michigan is the Eastern time zone. Chicago, of course, is one time zone over. And so there is obviously a spot very near that line where people are like, hey, it's an hour earlier over here. It's not that far away. And what's weird is the time zone line does not follow the border of Michigan in the Upper Peninsula. It actually weaves around. And so there's times when you're driving on US 2 heading towards Wisconsin where you'll actually see a thing that says, entering this time zone, leaving that time zone, and it's bizarre. And yes, so there is some randomness to it, but I like time zones. Now, daylight savings time is another thing altogether, but I actually like daylight savings time as well. I do, however, know people who don't like daylight savings time. Sub GR77 checking in from Davison, Michigan. Davison, Michigan, beautiful town. I believe they call it the City of Flags. The City of Flags. Tryfinger says that Ben is easy to see when Steve moves. Is that because I'm casting shadows or am I blocking it? Jose Rodriguez says, hey, amigo. Matthew Shostrom, I'm in Fort Mitchell, Alabama, technically central, but we as a collective run off eastern. Okay. G. Vogt points out that time zones were started by railroads. And there was a time when time zones and times themselves were not standardized, which is bizarre to think about. And I'm not going to get into a dissertation on it here, but I've mentioned before about the Italian Hall disaster that took place in Calumet, Michigan in 1913. And I talk a lot about it. I've written books on it and so on. And the town of Red Jacket, where that took place, was run by a mine called Calumet and Hecla. And that mine had so much control that they decided they didn't like the local time zone. And they moved all clocks off by not an hour, a half hour. So when it was noon in a town right nearby, I believe it was 11:30 in Calumet. And it's one of those oddities. But the reason that the trains needed to have the time zones was that if it's noon here, and these people consider it noon here, and these people consider it noon here, but there's no standardization to it. How do they synchronize their schedules? Because trains are one of those things that, number one, you want them to be on time, but number two, you don't want them running into each other. And so now, quite often, you'll have tracks going both directions, you hope, but not always. So it just made things much safer and much more efficient with respect to the railroad industry to have standardized time zones. Chris Hale, hello from Waterford, Michigan. Do you get a lot of lemon law cases on Dodge Journeys? No more, no fewer than any other company out there. That one doesn't ring a bell, but it wouldn't surprise me. David Hastings checking in from Paducah, Kentucky. Paducah. It's one of those names that's always fun to say. It's like Escanaba. Paducah. I don't know why. Stephen Shaw, Ontario finally eliminated the time change, but won't until New York State and Quebec join us. So what are that? They've like provisionally said they will as soon as the others go along, or what? So that might take a while. Walter White, Arizona does not change, so we are one of the few constants in the universe. Which has got to confuse the people, because I know a lot of people do vacation, but also migrate to Arizona, like the snowbirds who go to Florida. So there's a lot of people in Arizona in the wintertime who spend their summers someplace else. And that's got to be a little confusing. Although I guess if you get there in the wintertime, that's the only time zone time period you might not care that much about it. So Jeopardy 4100, all Alaska is one time zone. Huh. That's interesting. I've heard, by the way, Song Yardbird, hello from Lorain, Ohio. I've heard that Russia covers so much of the globe that if you look at all the time zones that are in Russia, going all the way from the far east to the far west, don't get me going, that you can be in one spot in Russia and see the sun rising while somebody else in another spot in Russia can see it setting. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what I've heard. So, Quentin Wilson, Juneau to Dutch Harbor, all one time zone. And Dutch Harbor, of course, is well known to the people who watched that fishing show about the deadliest catch. I forgot what it's called. David Beeler, aviation uses Greenwich Mean Time, which is GMT. Yes, and of course, and I'm don't want to do a dissertation on this either, but you can also then figure out what time zones are if you get confused by going, like Eastern time zone, I believe is GMT plus 5. Is that right? Or minus 5, plus 5, plus 5. Anyways, so you count from GMT, and the GMT is Greenwich, which is, of course, over there. So, bottom line, Marine. Hi, Steve. We are stuck in the 1970s here on the Isle of Man. Are you on the Isle of Man? That's cool. I've always loved those little islands that have their own little. I don't mean it as a demeaning thing. I mean it more as a cool thing, that they have like your own culture and society on an island like that. That's separate enough to where you can be independent, but you're not like the Canary Islands or something. So, Dana Engelbrecht, you're the coolest, Steve, watching from South Jersey. I think Dana is experimenting to see if by saying nice things, they might call out your name. But I actually will read these and simply call people out as they catch my eye. So I appreciate that. I believe you are the coolest, Dana. So, somebody asked about whether there was a lag there, and actually I'd paused the chat to address to actually read one. The problem is I start reading and then it jumps ahead of me and I got to back it up. So Dana says, no, I really watch you all the time. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And chime in more often. Barbara Rylander, hello from Ludington, catching most of this later, got to go to the beach. Sunsets in Eastern Standard Time around 5 p.m. Yeah, and you are fun to listen to. Wait, Barbara, are you in Ludington, Michigan? And if so, why are you going to the beach? I mean, well, I guess it's a sunny day here. I guess you can go to the beach. But it's going to be a little on the chilly side. So, Song Yardbird always wanted to go to the Isle of Wight. Yeah, and that's what they used to have. Do they still have the concerts there, the big festivals there, the Isle of Wight? I know it's a big deal. Jeff Smith, my battery clock gains 5 minutes half a year. Good time to adjust it. I've got a digital alarm clock that gains time, and it's one of the freakiest things. And I don't notice it for a little while. And then every now and then I'll realize, like, wait, it's a few minutes fast. And eventually it gets to be 10, 12 minutes fast. And I've actually got to readjust it. But since it's what wakes me up in the morning, I often let it because it gets me started earlier. Robert Penzick suggests that the Deadliest Catch show could be called The Deadliest Catch. It's a little too obvious, I think. Retired butcher boy, is there any liability for putting up a beware of dog sign? That's an interesting question. I get asked that a lot. It might vary from state to state, but generally speaking, if you don't put up a beware of dog sign and your dog bites somebody, you might be liable for that. On the other hand, if you put up a sign that says beware of dog and your dog bites somebody, you might be liable for that too. So I don't know that the sign's going to change much unless they claim that you're putting the sign up proves that you knew the dog was a biter. In which case, then why'd you ignore the sign? So I don't know. That could go both ways, but I doubt there's much danger to putting one up. In fact, I think it's probably not a bad idea, even if you don't have a dog. Dog bites. And Barbara says that it is, in fact, warm for Michigan. And you're correct. So, JRB Pit 1, I live on Kent Island, Maryland. Is that MD Maryland, Eastern Standard Time? Very cool. Island living has got to be an interesting thing, especially if you don't have a bridge to your island. There are some islands that I know of where people live there and there's an island to the bridge. And then there's some islands where there is no bridge. So like Drummond Island in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, if you live there, there's a ferry that goes back and forth. And there's enough stuff on the island to get by, but not everything you need. And so you need to make trips periodically to the mainland. And so then you find yourself jumping on a ferry. Now, the ferry is not that far. It's a short little distance. But I know that there's other islands where, you might be out there and get stuck out there based on the weather and so on. Sam Robinson. Hey, Steve, I appreciate the legal commentary and epic storytelling. Seriously, your info on car salesmen helped my sister see through the BS and get a better deal. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I've had people as recently as today say, Steve, all you do is talk about stuff. Why don't you do something? Besides my law practice and shooting the videos and writing books, what I should be doing something. But you understand that education, teaching people stuff, is actually often one of the first steps in improving something. So if you're looking around you and you ask yourself, what's wrong with this picture? Step number one is identifying and going, that's the problem. Okay? Step number two might be fixing the problem, but if fixing the problem involves a lot of people acting together, step two is actually education. Step three is getting people to fix it. So if I spot a problem, I think I've spotted a problem, then I tell you about it. And if everybody goes, that's a problem, it's much easier to get it fixed than if I simply go, I think I spotted a problem, I'm going to go fix it. Besides that, who made me in charge of all this? So my goal is to educate people. And if it helps you save money, great. If it keeps you from being ripped off, that's even better. And if it's a widespread problem that we can all get together and fix, we'll do that too. But step two is education. So there you go. Lemsy says, Steve, I asked a question yesterday about a change in business. It relates to the Michigan Supreme Court decision that a mechanic that starts a job is considered done or completed. I'm not sure which question you're referring to. I do know the case you're referring to, but that was an unusual case because the court was interpreting a word in a statute and they wanted to get a certain result. So they actually contorted their logic to make it work, but I'd be curious to know what the question you're asking is. Ilya says the ancient Romans put up nice mosaic beware of dog signs. There's one in Pompeii. That's interesting. Justin Priolo, Steve, can I take you up on your shirt? The shirt, by the way, is the one I got. There we go. It wasn't actually gifted to me. I had this shirt made. I had a couple of them made. And those of you who watch my show and have watched it for a long, long time know that about a year or two ago, some guy threatened to sue me. And we were talking, and he goes, I'll sue you. And I go, dude, I sue people for fun. Like that's not a threat. That's not a threat. And when I told that story, several people said, oh my God, that's funny. I sue people for fun. So I had to put on a shirt. Oh boy. Cowboy Butler, how often do you actually get a client in a courtroom where the case against the defendant can't be settled in a lemon law case? It has been a while. It has been a while. First of all, nothing's happening in court these days. But I would say 97 or 98% of all my lemon law cases settle. It's a question of when they settle. But I'm very good at how I go through and make sure they're good cases. I line them up just right. And I also have been doing this for so long. I know the attorneys pretty well. If I bring them a case, go, guys, this is a good case. We work it out. So, Admin Sani says, I told a man, lawyer son, about your channel. He had not heard of it. I bet he'll view your videos. Okay. Yeah, spread the word. Oh, I actually had about a dozen of these shirts made, and I gave a bunch of them to my friends. And I thought more attorneys would embrace it. And I had a couple of attorneys tell me, they go, Steve, it's the funniest thing I've ever heard, but I couldn't wear the shirt. And I go, why not? And he goes, because as you know, every defendant that you sue claims that the lawsuit's frivolous. I said, okay. And they go, can you imagine if they walked into court and had a photograph of me wearing a shirt that says I sue people for fun? And I said, yeah, you just tell them it's a joke. And he goes, something I couldn't do that. So, yeah, what are you going to do? Chris Hale, low-flying aircraft. The low-flying aircraft sign was sent into me by a viewer who is actually right now going to flight school. And he sent it in after I did the video about the owls. Or no, not about the owls, but I explained it. But there was a video I did about a low-flying airplane that hit a truck. And I used a thumbnail of a sign that said, "Beware of low-flying owls," because I just happened to have one. And then later, he sent me that. So if you look at the end of any video in the last 2 or 3 months, in the closing credits, it says, "Yes, beware of low-flying owls." Christopher Robinson. Hi, Steve. Hi, Christopher. Sue Beavis. Hey, Steve, from Northwest Alabama. Northwest Alabama. Thank you for checking in, my friend. Sue Beavis. And I'm sure that's the bane of your existence. People asking you, where's Butthead, right? There is a college in California in a little town called Laverne. And I know people who went to Laverne, the University of Laverne or Laverne University. And every time they told somebody not from that area where they went, they'd go, "Oh, what about the University of Shirley? Oh, Laverne and Shirley, get it?" And after you've heard a joke about like that, like that about 1,000 times, it does get stupid. But when the joke occurs to the person, they should realize this has already been done 1,000 times, which is, by the way, I didn't crack a joke about that. Number one, I don't know if it's your real name, but number two, I'm sure you've heard it. I'm sure you've heard it. Johnny Knoxville reminds us that Laverne and Shirley was set in Milwaukee. I forgot about that, but you are correct. Eric Norman, have you lost a lemon yet? You mean lost a case involving lemon law? You don't win them all, but like I said, 99% of them settle where my clients are happy. So you can imagine the math on that. Boycott watch. I had a client who told me he sues people for fun, so I dumped him as a client. That's not a bad idea. I can tell you that I've had clients before that I suspected were trouble. And if I had to, I'd cut them loose. And I've had attorneys tell me about problem clients who have sued them or grieved them, and you hear what causes it. And it's never that somebody had this fantastic case that got destroyed by a horrible attorney. It's usually somebody who's got the wrong mindset to begin with, but we won't go there. Walter White says, I saw a picture of you and Jay Leno on the Automobile and American Life Chrysler's Turban car the other day. Pretty cool. I'll have to check that out. I'm not sure which. I mean, I'm sure I know. I hung out with Jay Leno for a day at his garage, and we shot a video about the Turban car. I'm not sure about the picture, though, for Automobile and American Life. There have been a few things that popped up recently in the news about Turban cars. So there's a picture. I've got it. In fact, I used it on the dust jacket for my book on the Chrysler Turban car, where Jay and I are standing next to a Turban car. And I've also got another picture where he and I are sitting next to each other, and I forgot if we're shaking hands, but I've got my book between us, and we're just standing there in front of the Turban car. So, David Fowler, hey Steve, are you still following Aston Villa? I haven't been, simply because Premier League soccer over here, Premier League football, is on a couple different channels that are not the type I always watch. And also, if the games are live, they're at a weird time. And if they're rebroadcast, are not as interesting to watch. So I have not been watching them this season. So Walter White, looks like you were in the shop holding up a book. Yeah, that would be that photograph then. Okay. I'm wearing a striped shirt with a collar, no less. Fred Stewart, have you ever been countersued by a client? Well, countersuit means that you sued them first and then they sued you back. I don't know that I've ever sued a client. So I guess the answer to that would be no. Lee Harvey says, according to GM, defective Corvette wheels are a product of failed engineering, not workmanship. What do you think? I did a video on that, and I think that's a silly argument, but it's a great example of how people who sit there and look at words on paper and forget that they actually have a connection to the real world, which is what a lot of judges do. lose track of the fact that arguing that and just saying, hey, look, they made lousy wheels, so what? Most people don't make that distinction in their head. I buy a product, it should work. And I've had several people in response to the video go, but what about the implied warranty of fitness for a particular purpose or the implied warranty of merchantability? And the problem is the implied warranty of merchantability arises between the buyer and the seller, not the manufacturer. And so you can't get GM for the implied warranty of merchantability. That's the weird part about the law. And so one of the things that having a dealer network does, it insulates you from claims that are made between buyers and sellers because GM doesn't sell you the car. Lemzia, what kind of miles per hour did the turbine car get, or do you mean miles per gallon? The gas mileage was all over the place depending on how you drove it. You could get decent gas mileage if you were very, very careful about it and did a lot of highway driving. But stop and go traffic, like, rush hour in Los Angeles, you may as well just take, fuel and dump it on the ground with buckets. It would have been bad. As far as acceleration goes, believe it or not, you could get those things to go quickly if you knew what you're doing, and you did it by pulling a brake torque because there was no torque converter in the engine and there was no direct lockup, so that you could step on the gas, wind it up to, 45, 50,000 RPM, and then pop the brake, and the car would launch like a rocket. But they didn't want you doing that because it wasn't very good for the car. But it's true. I read some interviews with guys who did that. So, up, it jumped again on me. JP says his Jeep Gladiator diesel got him 30 miles per gallon this morning. Was that on a long trip? And did you actually measure that based on how much fuel is used over distance, or are you going off like an onboard computer thing? I'm curious. Paul Van Santvoort 123 says, hi, Stephen all. Dutch guy here. Well, we're guessing by Paul Van Santvoort that you are indeed Dutch. Although, to be honest, we've got an area of Michigan around Grand Rapids that has a large Dutch community. So it wouldn't surprise me if we had some Dutch people there as well. Daniel Kester is a Canadian robot lady here. I do not see her. I will send her a quick message and see if she's around. Let's see here. And I will let you know. JP says that mileage came over 120 miles. The digital readout is accurate. Very good. Very good. I know that one of my vehicles has got a thing that shows you instantaneous miles per gallon, but that's climbing it's doing this all the whole time because as you speed up or slow down or hit your brakes and so on. Paul Van Santvoort, how many videos did you do with LEA? Did you mean J? J-A-Y? I'm not sure what you're asking. I did one video with Jay Leno. Is that what you're talking about? With Leonard French. I did at least one on his channel. And then he did one with me on my channel. And I think he and I actually did two on his channel. We were going to do a second on my channel, and we just both got too busy. So, Leonard's a great guy. Leonard's hilarious. And it's funny because he's younger than I am, but I get contacted from time to time by older attorneys, guys my age or older, old school guys though, who are like, I wish I could do what you do, but I don't understand it, And it's kind of fun to talk to Leonard because he's a fun-loving attorney, very, very smart, knows what he's talking about, but he doesn't mind having fun. And there's a lot of attorneys out there who actually think that when they graduated law school, they were forbidden from having fun ever again. So, Dixie Champagne, I missed Friday, didn't get the memo, watched it this morning. I apologize. Again, I mentioned earlier that I was having trouble with YouTube trying to schedule it. And every time I scheduled it, we can't accept that. So I went live, and I'm not sure how many people actually got the notices. Scotty Beam, I thought you did 3 videos on his channel. I might have, But I know that we had a deal going where I did one on his and he did one on mine, and we went back and forth. So it's possible I did 3 total with him, but one's on my channel. Or it might be we did 4 total. I don't know. I forgot. Dixie Champagne. I love Leonard French. I think it's cute how he pronounces. I'm never going to attempt that as if it were French. I'm not sure what that word is. Dixie Champagne. Oh, is it German? Obergefell? I don't know. I can't. I've recently got a bunch of grief from Johnny Knoxville says we begged Steve to go live, and that's exactly what happened. I had several people ask me, why didn't you do a live stream? And I said, well, will anybody watch? A lot of people are shopping on Friday. But I got a lot of grief from a couple of Finns lately, and most Finns are very, very polite and not prone to pointing out errors made by other people. And I got a ton of grief from one Finn in particular who was angry that I referred to these on my license plate as A's, the letter A. And I said, well, in Finnish, they'd have umlauts over them. And in Finnish, they use different letters than we do. And so, for instance, a typical old school Finnish typewriter does not have the letter B on it. B as in boy. Because they don't use the letter B. They just don't. And so, as strange as that is, they have several different vowels, more than we do. And one vowel they have looks like our letter A, but it has what appears to be an umlaut over it. And I believe it's pronounced as opposed to a. So when I said this right here is the Finnish word for snake, but those A's should have umlauts, this guy got bent out of shape about those aren't A's with umlauts. Those are different letters altogether. And I know that. I've actually written about that before. And I won't get into why I've written about it, but I understand that they use different letters. But the point is, if I tell Americans, well, those aren't A's, those are as. Most people go, what? And I have to explain, well, it's an A with an umlaut over it, but it's a different letter. And so if I gloss over anything, I've had people go nuts because I left details out. But if I do a video where I explain all the details, they go, who cares about this stuff? So you can't make everybody happy. Oh, David Landry, if you lived in New Jersey, or if I lived in Michigan, I would hire you to sue people for fun. But you don't have to pay me if it's fun, right? Sarah Callahan, we hit the 280s for total live viewers Friday, I believe. It might have been a little higher than that. At the end of the video, they put up a quick screen that tells me the peak concurrent viewers, the highest number we reached all at the same time. I think it was a little higher than that, but I forgot. It's been a long time. We used to get really, really good numbers, but who knows? COVID. I blame everything on COVID. David Hughes, have you ever considered doing a video with Viva Fry? I have watched a few of his videos, but no, I don't go out looking for. Bender Fender just put up the letter, which looks like an A with an umlaut. just don't call it that. Oh, Ilya, those are not A's, those are S. No, I know what you're saying. Those are as, right? It's the same vowel sound that you get out of the word bat or cat or hat, or the cat in the hat. but just don't yell at me about it. We'll be fine. The Fuse Man just checked in and it jumped on me again. Where'd it go? Checking in, but I have to leave and run an errand for sister. Orange cars, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Really? 7884 Kelly C1. Hi, Steve. I had to send the video you made on what to do if pulled over by law enforcement to my son. He finished driver's ed, but they didn't cover this. Should driver's ed include what to do? I think they should. And I'll tell you, I took driver's ed at Birmingham Seaholm High School in Birmingham, Michigan. The summer I turned 15. And I remember one of my driver's ed instructors saying, by the way, here's what you should do if you get pulled over by a police officer. And I thought, hey, this is great advice. Someday I might get pulled over by a police officer. Turns out I was. And it is extremely good to know. And the weird thing is, I have people say, Steve, I did it. It didn't work. Well, number one, you probably deserve the ticket. But number two, not everything works all the time in human interactions. But what we're doing is trying to reduce the odds of you getting a ticket. And I've had it work for me. I've had countless people tell me it worked for them. And I've spoken to police officers, judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys. I've spoken to every level of people in this equation. And they all say that the officer has got discretion at the side of the road. And if you were to do a spectrum of people who were good to the cop and people who are mean to the cop, chances are the people who are mean to the cop are more likely to get a ticket than the people who are good to the cop. Some cops write everybody. Some cops give all kinds of people breaks. But guess what? Playing the odds. Now, if you say, Steve, I get pulled over once every 45 years. Okay, it might not matter for you. But, some people get pulled over every 5 or 10 years. It might help. I've had someone tell me, Steve, I've never been pulled over in my life. I watched your video and I thought to myself, I got pulled over. So I did those things and the cop gave me a warning. Now, he might have just gotten a warning because it's the first time he's ever been pulled over. Or it may have worked. But the point is, it won't hurt you to do it. And that's the thing. Anytime you're looking at something where someone says, here's what you should do, I think you should behave this way. In your head, do the cost-benefit analysis. What will it cost me? And what could I benefit? And so, hang on. I'll tell you in a second. So, ask yourself, what would it cost you? What will you benefit? So, what's it going to cost you to be polite to the cop? Not much. What could it benefit you? Fewer points, possibly no points, or no ticket. That's a huge benefit. So the downside is you got to be polite to a police officer for 5 or 10 minutes. The upside potential is it could save you a bunch of money. And if you get a ticket for doing something that gets you 3 points, in many states, your insurance rates will go up for 2 years, possibly 3 years. So the cost of the ticket and the cost of the insurance is so big versus you being polite to a cop for 5 minutes. That to me is a no-brainer. And so the idea that people get bent out of shape going, I can't believe you're telling people to be nice to the cops. Oh, you're a kiss ass. You're a bootlicker. I've had to delete probably 1,000 comments. People said, you're a bootlicker because I said that you should be polite to a police officer. I did delete them, by the way. I have no sorrow about doing that. Really? You can't be nice for 5 minutes in the hopes of saving yourself a few $1,000? You know something? At that point, I can't help you. You're too stupid to get help. Sorry. Peter Mandix, driver's ed, what's that? In Michigan, they've done away with the public schools doing driver's ed for free in the most part. Some districts still have it, but Michigan has made it to where it's pretty much privatized. And it's bad. I know people whose kids have gone through it, and what they're learning now is nothing compared to what we learned going through driver's ed. Tiger stripes, also extremely important to answer that question. Do you know I pulled you over with a polite? No, I don't. That's what I also suggest. And, I have people tell me, well, I've talked to police officers, and he said, honesty is the best policy. Well, but, honesty is one thing, but confessing is another. I'm guilty. Okay. So I've always managed to do the old, I'm sorry, I don't know, I want to go. It's your job, not mine, but whatever. Dixie Champagne, I could lick their boots and they'll still throw the book at me. I've had people tell me that. They go, hey, Steve, cop pulled me over. I did everything right, and I still got a ticket. Someone I know very well told me that as the police officer approached their car, they turned on their dome light, rolled their window, and put their hands on the wheel like this. And the cop walked and goes, what are you doing? And I said, what'd you say? And he goes, oh, I'm doing this so you can see my hands. And she said, oh, okay. But he was actually thinking he might get in trouble for doing that. But again, think of it from their perspective, especially at night. They're walking up to a dark car. They don't know what they're going to encounter. Turn the dome light on, put your hands on the wheel, make sure the window's down already, and then they walk up and they can see your hands and they see you're cooperative. It takes a load off of them. So, Adam L., I was told by a cop that he writes the word a-hole on the back of the ticket if you act like that. So he has a reminder when you go to court. And I've never seen that on a ticket, but I've seen things very close to it. And a lot of tickets, the police officer writes a ticket out and he keeps one copy for him or herself and they give you a copy, right? They can put notes in the back of their tickets. And I've seen a police officer back in the room or the prosecutor, and I've seen him flip it over to see if there's anything in the back. Your goal is to be the one he doesn't remember. So Daniel Kester's checking out. I have to go. See you next week. I agree. Thank you for stopping in, my friend. Thank you for saying hello. David Landry, have you had any lemon law cases on the 2012 Ford Fusion SEL? I don't recognize that model number. I mean, the Ford Fusions, weren't those the ones with dual clutch transmissions? I mean, I had a lot of those cases. The problem, of course, is the 2012 vehicle is now 8 years old. So most of my cases involve cars that are 1 or 2 years old, which are lemon law cases. Beyond that, we're often talking about things like, breach of warranty and so on. Rational Bushcraft, carry donuts and offer them one. Always a sure way to get off. Or leave a trail of donuts behind your car because they'll stop and pick them all up before they get to your car. Song Yardbird, please, people, the cop is just doing his job. J-O-B. Yeah, Fred Stewart, the worst thing to do is make an LEO nervous. I can tell you that when I was in driver's ed, and this is how times have changed, back in the 70s and early 80s, they would actually encourage you, if you could, to get out of your car and walk back to meet the police officer. They'd actually tell you that. And the thinking was that you're meeting them halfway. They don't, and sometime in the 80s, they said, no. Stay in your car. We don't want no one getting out of the car. So Carson Keller, always fight the ticket. I agree 100%. The reason I say that is they write so many tickets, they can't fight them all. And so chances are the ones that you fight will be the ones that cut you some slack, unless you really screwed up. Chris Hale, I own a small engine repair business here in Waterford, Michigan. Have you ever sued someone over a lawnmower repair? No, I haven't. And I'll tell you why. In Michigan, we've got a law called the Motor Vehicle Service and Repair Act that says that you can sue a mechanic over repairs done to an automobile, but it doesn't apply to lawnmowers. And so if someone had a defective lawnmower or an engine they brought into you and you fixed it wrong, let's just assume you did it completely wrong. What's the cost of a lawnmower engine? A couple $100? So it would be more of a small claims issue than anything you get an attorney involved in. So Carson Keller didn't fight a ticket over an hour away, so it wasn't worth it because I didn't get any points. And that's another one where there are police officers in small jurisdictions out in the middle of nowhere. They will purposely write no point tickets, 5 over or something. And they know darn well that you look at it and go, hey, it's no points and an $85 fine. Just pay it. It's not worth fighting. So 2000 MCR, better call Jackie Childs. Jackie, the attorney from Seinfeld, who is a hero of many in the legal community. Carson Keller, 5 over is no points in Pennsylvania. A lot of states, they have that as a no pointer. Also, they have one called impeding traffic, which is a no pointer. It depends on when or where you get the ticket. 90 knots. I had my pilot's license before my driver's license. And correct me if I'm wrong, 90 knots, but is it true still that the FAA actually technically has no age limit on getting a pilot's license? In other words, if you can prove that you understand the law and how to fly a plane competently and can pass the FAA exam, you can be certified as a pilot. And there is no minimum age like with a driver's license of, say, 16. And I know that there were people that I knew who got pilot's licenses also at 15. So Mark Sparks, I had a young officer get visibly scared after asking me to get out of my car when he saw my size. He immediately called for backup, even though I wasn't doing anything, but his supervisor was much calmer. Yeah, well, the guy should have said, hey, dude, get back in your car. I'm sorry. Something, just get back in your car. JP says, I went to court for passing on a solid line in upstate New York. The judge's name was Dumas, not a joke either. So the name could either be Dumas, or Dumbass. And you don't want to appear in front of a cop or a judge with that name because they got grief their entire life, and they're probably exacting revenge from the bench or from their position of power. Cranky Apes, have you ever heard of having to pay the ticket on the spot? I don't know if that's currently the case anywhere, but I've heard stories about people who are traveling out of state and they get charged with something quite serious. And in the old days, they were worried that you just leave the state and never come back. So how do they get you to pay the ticket? I've heard of people actually having to go into the police station or to a magistrate and pay a ticket immediately. But obviously, if a police officer says, I want money right now, if you're not south of the border, that might be a problem. Red Renault 21 Turbo, Steve, what is your take on the phrase duty of care regards the Motor Vehicle Service and Repair Act? Does a duty of care occur in the Motor Vehicle Service and Repair Act, which is MCL 257 1201 at SEC? Or no, 1401. No, I'm sorry. 1401 is Lemon Law. 1301 is this Service Repair Act. Because I know that they talk about what's got to be done and so on. But there's the problem we talked about, which was that case that came down about 6 months ago now in Michigan, where the Michigan Supreme Court said as long as they started the job, they're deemed to have finished it, which makes no sense. So I think that was the silliest. Mike Conti says 13 is the youngest, and then somebody else is 16 for a private pilot. So we have a conflict here, whether it's 16 or 13. I know at one point in time, technically, they didn't have one. I don't think they had one, but they may have instituted one since then. Mark Sparks weighed a little over 300 pounds at the time that he was asked to get out of the car. I've never weighed that much, but Lilith Calbridge, are there attorneys other than at law? Well, technically speaking, there are, but not really. And when we're talking about attorneys or lawyers, they are attorneys at law. It's just a phrase. There are certain phrases in our language where you look at it and go, that doesn't really make that much sense. But, attorney at law has been around for so long. It's like attorney and counselor. Are you really a counselor? I don't know. I mean, I can probably counsel you on some things, but I never call myself a counselor. 90 knots, I'm hoping to get my IFR in Michigan this next summer. I believe that's an instrument rating. And I've got a very good friend of mine who is a pilot who just got a plane. Haven't flown with him yet, but he keeps telling me he's going to take me up. So one of these days, we'll go flying. Bruce Bola. I'm an airline pilot and flight instructor. It is 16 years for a private pilot for an airplane. So here's the question. Has it always been the case, Bruce, or have they changed that or upgraded that recently? And by recently, I mean the last 10, 20 years. Because I'm reasonably certain I heard of people who are under 16. But then I also know that once in a while you'll hear some story about, hey, there's some kid who's going to fly around the world. He's a pilot. And you find out he's got a co-pilot who's an adult. And of course, there's two sets of controls. But I'm not saying anything about that. So the question simply is, if it's 16 now for a private pilot's license, has it always been 16? So I will try to watch for an answer. Canadian Robot Lady is, in fact, in the house now. Thank you very much. Chris Woodhouse, if you can pass the bar, why do you have to go to law school? The question is whether or not you could actually pass the bar without going to law school. As most states, like I know California has a thing where you can not go to an accredited law school and theoretically take the bar, but you've got to do a bunch of other stuff, which is pretty difficult. But I mean, I suppose it's kind of like saying, well, if you can pass a medical exam, why go to medical school, right? Do you want a doctor performing surgery on you? He says, well, I passed the exam. Didn't bother with his school stuff, but we'll see. And Canadian Robot Lady is checking in from the great white snowy north, but it's not so snowy that a text message couldn't get through. Mush. We had to get the serum through. David Landry, did you get your money back for the frozen restaurant lasagna? As an Italian American, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. I did not get charged for it. And what's sad is, at the end of the whole ordeal, I'm reasonably certain that they said, like, is there anything else you'd like? And everyone I was with was done eating. I'm like, no, I'm not going to make these people sit here and watch me eat. I was their entertainment. Rational Bushcraft, you can race a car if you can reach the pedals. My grandson at 14 races at Kalamazoo. Yeah, and it's on private property, and so they can do anything they want that they consider to be safe. And it's more a matter of whether the other racers will tolerate it. And as you can imagine, most of the other racers are going to say, hey, kid, if you can race, we don't care how old you are. So I'm all for that. Boy, did it take a huge jump there. Josh Woodland, I'm from Michigan. I got a speeding ticket in West Virginia. Cop wrote me for 59 and a 55. Later on, found out that any speeding ticket in West Virginia is a misdemeanor. Yeah, that's crazy because in Michigan, you are correct. Most are civil infractions, and 4 over certainly would not be a crime in Michigan. Did you have to hire an attorney for that? That'd be too bad. 90 Knots just sold my 172 and tail dragger this past summer. Bruce Bola says, I started flying in 1973, and it's been 16 since I've been flying. Really? Wow. I know there has to have been a time when it wasn't 16. But I also wonder how much of that was you still had to take the test and pass the test, and that would weed people out. And I've known people who, and I'm sure 90 Knots and Bruce, I'm sure you're going to test this, the FAA flight test ain't easy, right? So I can see a time where it may have been, hey, if you're 15 and you can pass the test, knock yourself out, But there is something to be said for the maturity that you have as you get older, So if you said, hey, Steve, we found an 8-year-old kid and he passed the test, I wouldn't want him flying. Not over my head. Sheila West, when do I call you attorney, Steve Lehto, and when do I call you counselor? Well, that's the point. They always say attorney and counselor. They never say attorney. They'll sometimes, just attorney, but they'll never say counselor. It's always attorney and counselor. And it's like one of those phrases, it's like a font of wisdom. You rarely hear of any other fonts, just a font of wisdom, or font of knowledge. MK in California, you don't have to go to law school, but you have to intern. Well, there's more to it than that, though. I went to law school in California, and they have unaccredited law schools in California. You can attend an unaccredited law school, for one, and then you can also intern. But then there's also what they call the baby bar, which is a different exam you've got to take. And you got to pass that one along with your training, and then you got to be able to pass the real one. And the passage rate for the people doing it that way is really, really low. So they have to take the same bar exam everyone else does, and so it's a mess. But Carson Keller, how do speeding tickets work if you get one out of state? Most states belong to an agreement where they trade information back and forth. Not all states, and some states like Michigan is not a part of that agreement per se, but they still trade information. I know they do. So if you get a ticket in Ohio and you live in Michigan, there's a good chance that Ohio ticket is going to show up in your record someplace and still affect your insurance and so on. Donald Fletchinger, gee, I'm not surprised you have skipped my comments. Were you commenting on things that I shouldn't be talking about or something? I'm going back. Are you aware that there are approximately 2 million registered third-party sellers on Amazon? Those are mostly small businesses. Doesn't surprise me at all. Amazon also has, tens of millions of books listed for sale. Adam L., I've had my Massachusetts commercial driver's license suspended for non-payment of a Connecticut ticket, and it's more expensive that way because I had to pay 2 reinstatement fees. I had to pay 2 reinstatements, or I had to pay to reinstate the Connecticut license, which I never had. And yeah, guys who have CDLs, I have the most respect for you because obviously to get a CDL is more difficult. And the way you guys get treated by the law, it's like you're driving on the roads, but it's almost like you're being treated as if you're flying airplanes or something. I mean, the level of bookkeeping, log books, and all that stuff that CDLs, especially owner operators, have got to put up with, is just crazy. Dave Beto has been watching Airplane Repo, beginning to think it is staged for effect. Much of it is. I mean, at least according to my opinion. It's been a while since I've watched it, but those guys are routinely breaking into buildings and running around, snatching things, people chasing after them, and it's kind of hard to imagine that you operate that way and that no one's taken you out yet, so to speak. But it is true that when you sign an agreement to buy something with a retail installment sales contract, that you often do agree that if the lender needs to repossess the collateral, they're allowed to do it so long as they can do it without a breach of the peace. And in some states, that means that they can come onto your property and get it. And so the question then becomes, what if it's behind a locked gate? What if it's inside a locked building? And that kind of stuff. But, I've seen some weird ones. Like I said, it's been a while since I watched, but I was always convinced that some of that was a little bit, because it's one thing for one guy to sneak into a building. It's another thing for him to sneak in with a film crew. That's a little bit harder to do. So MK, California, supposedly is the most difficult bar exam. I believe that is considered to be true. And among other things, it's a 3-day bar exam. Most states are 2. And the 3rd day of the California bar exam is a performance exam where they give you some really, really weird problem and give you 3 hours to work it out. And then in the afternoon, they do it again. And it's just a whole different thing. It's much, much more difficult. I've got friends in Michigan also who went there, studied for it, and took it. I also know people who studied for it, went there, and didn't pass it. And it's like 3 days of pain. So, yeah, it's crazy. Jeff Smith drove for 23 years, truck without a speeding ticket. Wow. Ghostwriter, did you enjoy the license plate pics I sent you? Yes. Several people sent me license plate pictures. And of course, in California, there's a recent ruling that says that pretty much the state's got to let you put anything you want on a license plate, much, much broader than what they used to, at least. They can no longer just say, oh, it's bad taste. So there's going to be all kinds of crazy stuff people will be putting on their plates now that isn't bad taste. In the old days, used to strike those down. So there's going to be a rush right now to get some of those plates. So we'll have to see. Donald Fletchinger. Hello, Steve. Did you know that yesterday was Small Business Saturday? Do you support small businesses? I try to when I have the opportunity. Sure. There's several small businesses. I also have mentioned before, I am a big supporter of local non-chain restaurants. Don't get me wrong. I've eaten at chain restaurants also. But yesterday, for instance, when I got my Viper, I drove it to one of my favorite restaurants on earth that's currently closed for sit-down dining, and I got carry-out. And I didn't have to drive that far to get that food. And one of the reasons I did is I wanted to support these guys because I feel bad that I know they're going to be losing business for a little while. So. Matthew Shostrom, the curse words are probably already taken. Oh, I guarantee you there was a rush. There was a rush to get some of those words, some of those phrases. Oh, boy. Jeff Smith, anytime they pulled me over, I guess they liked me. Did you get pulled over? Because that's the question. I know people who've driven for years and never got pulled over. And it's difficult, I think, if you do a lot of driving to just never get pulled over. Because, sooner or later, your number comes up, and now it's possible that if you never do anything remarkable, you never break any laws, you never run any stale yellow lights, you never drive over the speed limit, you're never out past midnight, and you're never driving a car that catches attention. Yeah, you might never get pulled over, but it seems highly unlikely for decades and decades to do that if you drive very much. Justin Priolo, is it legal for a social networking site to demand a social security number or an employee identification number without the intention to pay you anything? I've never encountered that before. Why would they want it? Of course, the question is, if they're a social networking site and it's privately operated and privately owned, that is, it's not a government entity. The argument might be that in that case, just don't sign up with it. Mike Ozra makes a comment about Adolf and whether or not he had two. And the question, of course, is, are you talking about putting the whole sentence on a license plate, or are you asking a serious question? Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville, Facebook demanding a driver's license or ID is insane. Do they? Doesn't ring a bell. See here. Bruce, I just checked the regulations again. Federal Aviation Part 61 says you can solo in a powered airplane at 16 and become a private pilot with powered flight at 17. Has not changed for decades. Wait, you can solo in a powered airplane and become a private pilot. So how are you soloing at 16 without being a private pilot? Is that like a learner's permit or something? But interesting. Oh, somebody's talking about Ilya. I had to take my dog for a quick walk. What did I miss? Not much. Johnny Knoxville, once in a while, Facebook will make you authenticate your identity if you use a fake name. Oh, well, that makes sense. But that explains why I haven't encountered it. I foolishly use the name Steve Lehto on Facebook. Daniel, hello from Bay City, Michigan. Thank you for checking in, my friend. I'm planning on this upcoming summer of 2021 that I am going to do a second half of a canoe trip that I started in 2019. Where I started in Sanford and I made it down to Bay City, but the water was low. I was going to come back and do it again. Didn't get a chance that summer. I was going to do it this summer, and then the Sanford Dam burst. So my friend and I are going to finish that trip next year. And we're going to launch from, I think it's called Immerman Park in Bay City, go down, and we'll be on the Tittabawassee River where it joins the Shiawassee River, becomes the Saginaw River. We'll take that out to Saginaw Bay. I think it's about a 25 or 30 mile trip by canoe, and I'll do that one Saturday or Sunday morning. So SD back out. I remember as a kid on That's Incredible, the show in the 80s with young kids flying. And see, that's what I'm wondering about. And so I suspect that they were flying with an adult next to them, kind of thing, right? I don't know. Mark Paulino, it's a student license. Yeah, like a learner's permit for a car. So you can fly solo to get your hours in. There you go. Jeopardy 4100. I used to be on the board for Immerman Park. Really? The one in Bay City? I didn't know it existed until last summer when I had to pull my canoe out. It's getting dark out. Tommy Cash, remember the 7-year-old wannabe pilot girl who crashed her plane? That, I think, is one of the ones I was thinking of. So I remember that there was a whole thing where the pilots are getting younger and younger who are going to fly around the world. And I'm always skeptical of that because there's, like I said, an adult sitting next to him with another set of controls. Valerie Rogers, if God had intended for me to fly or swim, he would have made me a duck. They do both. Song Yardbird, I fought the law, but the law won. Of course, that's a song by the Bobby Fuller 4, remade by The Clash. Great remake. But the Bobby Fuller 4, of course, is the original version. And then John Cougar Mellencamp did his version. I Fight Authority, and Authority always wins. It's like, wow, what a great idea for a song. Canadian Robot Lady's waiting for her new flip phone to arrive any day now. I don't care what anybody says. The Motorola StarTAC was one of the greatest design, like if you study like industrial design, just how things are built and how you function with them. The StarTAC flip phone is one of the coolest things ever. I will take that to my grave. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have a modern phone now, right? But that was so cool. That little flip phone. It looked cool. Everything about it. It was functional. It was so small. It was just cool. I love my little StarTAC. So Justin Priolo, I remember a time being 7, having to pop the clutch while my mom pushed. Which reminds us of the opening scene of The Karate Kid. But I believe Daniel's pushing the station wagon and his mom is popping the clutch. And that's one of the funnier things. If you have a vehicle with a manual transmission and the starter goes bad and you're either haven't had a chance to fix it yet, or you're lazy, or you're trying to save a couple bucks, you can push start it from time to time, right? Generally speaking, there are situations where you can't. But those are some good times, or you park on a hill and you roll start it. That's a good one too. Oh boy. Stuart Thompson still have a working flip phone, but no cell service will support it anymore. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, I mean, I recently was digging through a drawer and I found my old BlackBerry. And I also like my BlackBerry because the BlackBerry, you might remember, at one point in time had an actual keyboard on it. It had a decent sized screen for the time, but it had a keyboard that had actual keys. And I know you can work with the keyboards on these things, but I got big hands, first of all, which is a problem. But number two, like I remember running in the Free Press Marathon, and I always carry my phone on me for whatever reason. When I run a marathon, it takes so long. I need to have my phone on me just because I get bored. And so I remember running, and I'm, 18 miles into the run. I still got, days to go before I can rest. Pulling out my phone and like typing messages to people. And when you're running and you're tired and you feel the click and you're hitting the right buttons, it's really cool. But you can be running along with one of these phones and you're hitting the buttons, and you're hitting the wrong spot, and there's something nice about the actual feel of the mechanical button moving And I actually found that BlackBerry the other day, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I remember that. It wasn't that long ago. So, Ilya, I love the Karate Kid. Seen it about 100 times. Have you seen the TV series Cobra Kai? I think it's great. Yes, I have, and they did a very good job, I think, of bringing that character back, but updated. We're assuming we're talking about the original Karate Kid, not the remake set in China for some reason. But the Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio. And I saw that at the theater back in the day. And I remember I was taking Taekwondo lessons at the time, so it seemed really cool. And don't get me wrong, there's some silly parts in the movie, but overall, it's a very, very good movie. And I think that the Cobra Kai update is also very good. So I know people out there who are really bored right about now going, is there anything on TV I can binge watch? If you liked Karate Kid, check out the series Cobra Kai, where they updated it and shows you what became of the two main characters way down the road. By main characters, I'm talking about Daniel and the blonde antagonist. So there you go. Johnny Knoxville, we're going to watch Valley Girl with Nick Cage today. That's got a good soundtrack, as I recall. Sheila West, the original Karate Kid, was nominated for Best Original Screenplay. Was it really? I did not know that. That's impressive. Johnny Knoxville rented the first season of Jackass the other night on Amazon. I wonder why. The screenplay is still used in film classes as a specimen of great screenwriting. I did not know that either. It wouldn't surprise me. And again, I don't claim to be a cinematic genius or anything. I watch movies. I know movies I like and stuff. But Sheila, if you're into screenplays, I'm sure you're familiar with the story about Shakespeare in Love. And of course, it's not Julia Roberts. It's Gwyneth Paltrow and Joseph Fiennes. But there is a Julia Roberts aspect to it, which is the part that's frightening. And that is that Shakespeare in Love, if you watch the movie and you understand and you get it, if it touches you in that way. I'm not even a big Shakespeare fan, and I thought it was fantastic. I've seen it a million times. And you see how clever the screenplay is. And you're like, this is just genius. It works on so many levels. And then you read the story, and people who created that screenplay were shopping around Hollywood, and they got Julia Roberts to agree to be the star in it, which is just stupid. And she said, I'll only do it if Kenneth Branagh will play Shakespeare, because everyone knows he has to play Shakespeare. And so they said, okay. And they brought it to him, and he dithered on it. And he said, no, I'm out. At which point Julia Roberts goes, well, I'm out then too. So the project went into turnaround, as they say. And eventually it wound up with Gwyneth Paltrow and Joseph Fiennes and a whole host of other stars. Judi Dench plays the queen, of course. And she has to play the queen. Okay, Kenneth Branagh does not have to play Shakespeare. Judi Dench has to play the queen. And the finished result was a masterpiece. It won like 12 Oscars. It was huge, huge. And you look at that movie now and you go, two things. One, it would have been horrible with Julia Roberts. And number two, how could anybody look at that screenplay and go, I don't know if this is going to work? And you realize that there must be so much that goes into movies, and also so many ways they can spin out of control, that people can have in front of them what is in essence a perfect screenplay, and they go, I don't know if I can make this work. And so if you look, and I'm not, you can find the elements of what I just told you all over the internet. This is widely known that script was kicking around Hollywood for the longest time, and they couldn't get anyone to touch it. And they're like, well, Julia Roberts won't do it. It's like, what's wrong with you people? Tiger Stripes. And Branagh would have been all wrong for Shakespeare. Oh yeah. And it's not that it's a comedy, but it has a sense of humor. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure Kenneth Branagh could do that, but it worked so well with the people they got. So Sheila West, I love screenplays. I read them for entertainment. I've written a few, not sold any. The question is, have you read the screenplay for Shakespeare in Love, or are you familiar with it? I'm sure you have. Sometimes a script is meant as a drama and gets retold as a comedy. I can see that too. Ratso Fatso, Steve, the blonde antagonist. Isn't that what I said? Because Daniel would be the protagonist and the blonde guy would be the antagonist. Paul Dermilio, will you post the canoe trip? Yes, I will. Yes, I will. The first half actually I posted already a while back. So you can expect that when I do the second canoe trip, I have cameras I mount all over the place. I film it and I chop it down and make a video out of it. TG Green, is it illegal to say out loud in public to a person, I'm going to sue you? No, why would it be? I know people think it sounds like a threat, but it's not a threat of bodily harm. It's just, I mean, anybody can sue anybody. To say I'm going to sue you is the same as saying like I'm going to look meanly at you or I'm going to call you names or something. Tiger Stripe says that Ben Affleck is excellent in the movie because he's playing an a-hole. Oh boy, Romeo and Ethel, the pirate's daughter. If you haven't seen that movie, just watch it. Oh. Tiger Stripes, I maintain that Affleck is only good when he's playing a jerk. I would agree with that. Although he was good in Good Will Hunting, obviously, but the question is whether or not he's playing a jerk, because in some scenes he obviously was. Lee Harvey, Animal House, may we dance with your dates? I remember seeing Animal House at the theater when it first came out, and I was at the age right where they aimed that. I mean, I was the meaty part of the curve, and I remember literally like laughing so hard that I was like crying. I actually went and saw that movie. I think 3 or 4 times at the theater. I just couldn't get enough of it, and I realized now that it's like, yeah, it's been a while since I saw it, but it's now become like just a classic. You know, it's just what are you gonna say? Dixie Champagne, how about posting a snowmobile trip? I have never been on a snowmobile. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I never have been. Dave Beddoes waiting for Lemon Law Bible, the movie. Hey, if they can make a movie out of the game Battleship, I should sell the film rights and be working on the sequel. TG Green says, well, the person could pay for legal counsel and the person was just kidding. Well, why would you pay for legal counsel? You go to an attorney's office and go, hey, this guy's going to sue me. They go, for what? I don't know. Has he sued you yet? No. Has he filed a complaint yet? No. Well, wait till he does. Call me back. That's pretty much it. Ram 50 V8, Affleck and Damon and Dogma. Yeah, Dogma. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it was good. Yeah, and Jerk and Gone Girl. I don't know that much. I mean, I saw the movie Gone Girl. I'm not too crazy about it. I'm obviously familiar with The Jerk, if you're referring to the Steve Martin movie, which is a masterpiece. In fact, I referenced it in a video I put up, I think today or yesterday. The new phone books are here. I am somebody. Maven Johnson. This is the best pizza in a cup I've ever had. Oh boy. Johnny Knoxville, Secret Admirer with C. Thomas Howell, another classic. I've not seen it. C. Thomas Howell. That's another guy you don't hear about that often anymore. What happened to C. Thomas Howell? I'll have to look. I mean, all these things can be answered by looking at IMDb. I'm just a little bit, distracted right now. All I need is this ashtray. Well, this ashtray and this lighter. Okay, the ashtray, the lighter, this remote control. Oh, wait, and this lamp. That's all I need. Oh, boy. Callak, Callak. Some movies are a product of their times. Hollywood trying to remake them makes no sense. No, that's absolutely true. And once in a while, they'll remake a movie that was perfect the first time around. You're like, why are they remaking that again? And it's just, so that happens a lot. And it just, so. Dixie Champagne says she knows that I do not ride a snowmobile, but it might be a good year to change that. No. I don't have a burning urge to get on a snowmobile anytime soon. Don't get me wrong, but I will try to I'll find other things to do to entertain you. I may have mentioned this recently, but if I haven't, I'll mention it again. I think I'm going to buy another Army truck, but that would be in the spring. But I'm thinking about possibly picking up another Deuce and a Half. So if I do, take it out, shoot some film. It'll look different than the stuff I film in the Viper. So we will take the Army truck out and drive over stuff and through stuff and occasionally under stuff. So, Steve, do you think Daniel was really the Nad guy? No, I would think Daniel was the protagonist, which would be the good guy. Unless am I misusing the word protagonist? Yeah, Betty Boop learned how to ride a snowmobile in Aspen. It was actually easy. No, snowmobiles are real easy. Isn't it pretty much just a throttle? I mean, isn't it pretty much it? So, I'm not worried about how difficult they are. I just, number one, don't know anybody who owns one. Number two, I think it'll be cold. Protagonist, the leading character or one of the major characters in a drama. Protagonist. Okay. Jeopardy 4100, the Unimog. Nah, I'm going to go with an American-built Deuce and a Half. Probably like, similar to the one I had before. But possibly, one of the bobbed rear end, make it shorter. I don't need 3 axles. Duncan Campbell, if you get an X Army truck, you're going to need a bigger garage. No, but I will have to displace a vehicle. Right now, I've got room to park everything indoors, and the Army truck would come in, and the old Explorer would probably go out. So, Jeff Smith, go big. Steve, buy a Cessna. That's not going big. That's going expensive. Why am I not drinking this? I don't know. I know guys who own airplanes. They are extremely expensive, and I don't know how to fly one. I'd have to start at the beginning. So, and I live in Michigan, so. Scotty Beam. Can a person sue himself? I assume you're asking from a logical perspective when I say anyone can sue anyone. Theoretically, I could sue myself. You might laugh, but there might be circumstances that sound a lot like that. So, for instance, in some states, if I am driving a car and I got in an accident and my insurance refused to pay my damages, I'd have to file a lawsuit. Now, you wouldn't actually style it as me suing myself, but it is me suing my insurance company. But I've heard of states where if the spouse, for instance, gets injured in the car accident and the insurance covers or is in the name of the other spouse, even though it covers them, if the insurance denies the claim, the one spouse sues the other spouse. So I've heard of that. I don't know if it's still possible anymore, but I know in the old days that was one of the weird things that you'd get. So it'd be theoretically possible. Joel Kirschman, would you add an M2 Browning to the truck? I've never had the desire to actually put the weaponry on board the truck. They did make gun trucks in Vietnam in particular, where they had a Deuce and a Half or a 5-ton, and they'd armor them and put all kinds of stuff on them and put them in convoys so that when they got ambushed, these guys would drive to the front and start shooting back. I've seen those gun trucks at car shows and truck shows and stuff. Very, very cool, but that's not what I'm doing. I just want to get one to play with. Johnny Knoxville, get a Hummer. No. The truck I'm getting is bigger than a Hummer. I used to take my old M35 to Woodward Dream Cruise, and I'd pull up next to guys in Hummers and point down and go, hey, look at that. It's like an Army truck, only smaller. So, Bill Van Ram, at a car show, you may get more attention with an Army truck than the Viper. Probably, because the Vipers, although they're not common, they pop up from time to time. Army trucks are very, very seldom seen on the road, and car shows maybe, but other than that, I don't see that often, hardly at all. So, TG Green, is David Wynn Miller for real? No, I know who David Wynn Miller is. Are you talking about? Are we talking about the guy with the hyphens and the parse syntax, or am I thinking of somebody else? Scotty Beam, can anyone tell me how to cook a turkey without a stove, oven, or a microwave? How about an open pit with flames? Oh. David Landry, shouldn't Mr. Miyagi have gone to jail for beating up high school kids? Are you talking about when they were attacking Daniel after the Halloween dance? It was not acting as self-defense, but he was defending somebody else, and he's using non-deadly force. I highly doubt that if somebody had seen that, they would have thought he was the aggressor. Carson Keller, how much is it to fix an Army truck? They're actually very, very inexpensive to work on because there's so many of them that were built that the aftermarket is there with stuff for them. And there's a company in Memphis called Memphis Equipment. I got to visit them a few years back, and they actually have everything in stock. You need any part for Army truck, you can call them. I need one right now. And they're not that expensive, because when the military builds something, and they've been building deuce and a half trucks, the modern ones, I think, started in Vietnam. They may actually predate that, but I'm not sure how much of the stuff transfers over. But they've been building these things for decades and decades and decades. And so getting oil filters, air filters, basic parts, bumpers even, body parts like fenders or doors, they're cheap. I mean, there's so many of them out there. So they're not expensive at all. I'm going to have a harder time, for instance, getting maintenance done on my Viper than on an Army truck. And the reason I'm saying that, for instance, is my Viper has an aluminum block engine. So to do a coolant flush, I've actually got to get special coolant for the aluminum block. And I'm not going to do it myself because I don't trust myself, just in case. I'm going to have professionals do it. I've done an oil change on my M35, the old one. I've done a bunch of stuff to it. And it's easy to work on. They're designed to be simple. So the maintenance costs are low. The only issues I anticipate with it is it's the big old vehicle. There's going to be some places I take it where it's going to dwarf things I'm parked next to, which might be fun. Song Yardbird, the Army truck is bigger than a Hummer. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're big. I've got a video on my channel. If you simply search the word Army, I think you'll find it. But some video of me with my old Army truck. And the one I'm going to get will be just like that, but a little bit shorter, missing one axle. Johnny Knoxville is a guy on the Illinois-Wisconsin border on I-94 with a whole stockpile of old military equipment, including jets and helicopters. I'm not familiar with that. I've driven that stretch a couple times, but I do know there are some places where you'll often see depots that have got tons of these vehicles. Often it's National Guard. I can tell you where 2 or 3 National Guard bases are that just have there's rows and rows and rows of Army trucks. And, a lot of them run, a lot of them don't. So, John Brunkola, I heard that starting the deuce and a half can be fun. Believe it or not, if you get one that's in good running order, it ain't that bad. The one I had was a typical deuce and a half, 478 cubic inch straight 6, I believe. So you can imagine that, cylinders are yay big. It's a diesel, and it's a multi-fuel diesel. And to start it, you basically just press the starter button. Now, It had a built-in block warmer or manifold heater, built-in manifold heater. And you flip the switch and heat the manifold and then press start. And it actually gave a temperature. I forgot what it said, but it said use manifold heat below a certain temperature. Like, I don't know, it was minus 10, minus 20, something like that. I actually never had to use it. I could walk out on the coldest winter day, hit start, that thing went and fire right up. And I mean, never had a problem with it. And so, you know, we talk about car companies that have to build something and build it for a few years to get the bugs out of it. Well, they've been building these things for decades and decades, and they're using for military purposes. They can't have them not start. So trust me, they're not that hard to start. Tires won't be cheap. ZKR99. You are correct in that one, my friend. And likewise, they are big old truck tires. So you can't roll it into a gas station and go, guys, quick, slap on some new tires for me. Going to have to go someplace and get it done by professionals at a truck place. Cranky Apes, manual trans. That I'm not sure of. I like the manual transmission that my A2 had, the one I used to own. But I believe the more updated ones have automatics because they have a hard time getting kids these days who can drive a manual. But I'd prefer to have the manual, but we'll have to see. The one I had a manual transmission, high, low, a transfer case, and then it also had a creeper first gear. And so, yeah. Galen Urso, gas mileage. Not horrible, but it's got a 50-gallon tank. Galen Urso, get one with an enclosed bed and make a camper. You could theoretically, but Johnny Knoxville, Steve, next time you go to the Mars Cheese Castle, you can stop at the Russell Military Museum in Zion, Illinois. Have not heard of that one before. I've heard of the Mars Cheese Castle. Carson, how fast does the Army truck go? I had mine doing 55 all day long. I mean, and you might go 55. No, I mean, you don't buy them to go fast. But occasionally I take it up north, and that's, 500 miles. So you want to do 55. But one of the problems, believe it or not, is that at highway speeds, 10 knobby tires and a cloth roof, it gets loud. I used to wear earplugs. You had to. Otherwise, you get out of the thing and your ears be buzzing for a while. Peter Mandix, please stick with a stick. I will if I can. So, yeah, Johnny Knoxville. Steve's next video, don't buy an RV. Buy a deuce and a half. The question is if I'll get one that's got a heater, because my deuce did not have a heater. Had no heater, had no defroster, had no radio. I actually installed a cigarette lighter in it so I could have a car charger, because the deuce and a half, the one I had was a 24-volt system. So I wired it with a 12-volt cigarette lighter so I could plug things into it. And I plugged into it my GPS, my cell phone, things like that. So you got to think about this stuff. Carson Keller, I imagine it'd be good in the snow. Oh, yeah. Huge ground clearance, 4-wheel drive, or 10-wheel if you want to count all of them, on a 3-axle. And plus it had a winch. It had a winch. So you could winch anything out or winch yourself out of anything as long as you can find something to grab the winch onto. Try fingers, how far do you have to go to get to 55? They don't accelerate that fast. Again, think of it this way. Johnny Knoxville is showing a custom bobbed M35 A2 Deuce, base price $18,500. That sounds about right. It depends on how well it's equipped and how good the condition is and so on like that. But the main thing is that, think of it this way. The Deuce is the exact opposite of the Viper. Just exact opposite, okay? The Viper goes fast and handles well and all. The Deuce it gets there. The Viper looks nice. It's got great lines. The Deuce looks like a brick, but it's utilitarian, So what are you going to do? Jeopardy 4100, a 35-second quarter mile. I don't know it'll be that bad, but again, you're not getting it to go fast. You know, the Viper, I got to be careful pulling out of parking lots because if I pull out of a parking lot and don't do it right, I can scrape the nose. The M35, I can drive over things like cars and children and stuff to get out of the parking lot. So, you know, it's a different mindset. It'll be hard to go from one to the other. That's gonna be the tricky part. Get out of the M35 and get into the Viper. So, Mark Doherty, I got pulled over for going 70 miles per hour in a deuce and a half, and the judge laughed it out of court. It would be hard to get one going 70. I mean, you could do it probably. It'd be difficult, though. Valerie Rogers, no radio, a deal killer for me, and no makeup mirror. Oh, no, it's got makeup mirrors. They're this big, and they're on the side of the door. You don't want a radio. You couldn't hear it. There's too much other noise. So anyways, I'm going to wrap it up. We've been here for over an hour and a half. I will be back a week from today, 2 videos a day until then, and we'll talk about something else. You never know. Until then, talk to you later. Bye-bye.